Welcome to the Church Digital Podcast. Through this podcast, we'll talk about the technological innovations within the church. But more than tech for tech itself, we'll address deeper questions. Is disciple making possible digitally? How should we approach the digital mission field? Can a biblically grounded church operate in digital space? Oh, and where does the metaverse fit into all this? Whether you're a big or small church, an established church, or a startup church plant, the Church Digital's goal is to help churches like yours learn to be a multiplying church, digitally and physically. Our heart, that churches like yours would discover a newfound focus on disciple making that will revolutionize your church. And now, here's your host, Jeff Reed.
All right, hey everybody, it's episode 274 of the Church Digital Podcast. Jeff Reed here, founder of the Digital Church Network, and let's just say Dave Ferguson signs multiple of my paychecks, and therefore it is my pleasure to have Dave Ferguson on this show today. I have said it publicly many times, and Dave Ferguson we trust. So therefore, I'm really going to love having this podcast conversation with Dave. We'll get into what we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Before we get there, hey, this season here, we're talking about taking your digital and metaverse ministry to the next level. And so to do that, we've really been tying all this together into our learning communities that we're running through Leadership Network. You see, we've got a digital learning community. We're helping churches that have digital ministry that are maybe broadcasting a church service online and maybe toying with the idea of small groups. We're really helping them take next steps beyond what they're doing, centered around the weekend, looking at, hey, what digital community could look like, what maybe even digital planting looks like, starting to better, I don't know if that's good English, better understand what digital community is beyond just digital communication. Dave Ferguson's literally laughing at me. This is incredible. So, hey, look, if you're interested in the digital learning community, it's leadnet.org/DLC. Leadnet.org/DLC. Metaverse. Maybe you're interested in exploring the metaverse, understanding what virtual reality and what churches are, the huge missional opportunity that exists in the virtual reality space. And so how to have conversations, how to share Jesus, how to be the church in virtual reality, wearing that new Apple headset that's going to be coming out in a couple weeks that everybody and their mother is going to pay $3,000 for. I'm not kidding. It's going to revolutionize things. Listen, if you're interested in the Leadership Network Metaverse learning community, that's leadnet.org/MLC, Metaverse learning community for that one. We've got incredible co-leaders in this. It's going to be a great learning community. Oh, and did I mention the Metaverse mission trip? Now you have to go back to some past podcasts to understand how we are challenging churches like yours to go on a mission trip into virtual reality and how churches are already doing that. Organizations globally are doing that alongside you with that. So some really awesome things. Leadnet.org/DLC for digital learning community, MLC for the Metaverse learning community, and we'll put the links in the show notes. Dave, how was that for commercials? Was it short, succinct? Was it too long? Give me some criticism.
That was awesome. Number 274, huh?
Dang. 274. I wanted to call this to your attention.
You sound like Carey Nieuwhof.
No. Carey Nieuwhof. Well, Carey Nieuwhof's been doing a lot, and Carey Nieuwhof is, funding behind what he's doing. But what's interesting is I had you on. This is years ago for the 10,000th podcast. Like your episode was the 10,000th podcast play that we had through the Church Digital, and just a week or so ago,
let's be honest, by accident. It's not like you're going, hey, 10,000, we should get Dave Ferguson on to celebrate. No, it was like, oh crap, look, we just wasted our 10,000th episode on Ferguson. That's what happened.
Oh, the humility in the room. This is so great. But we just hit 100,000 plays.
Just the truth.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So listen, that was exciting for us. When we've been doing this pre-COVID. We started I want to say 2018 or 2019. I'd actually have to go back and look. And it's been a lot of.
That's good timing for what you're pushing here.
It's been a lot of learnings. It's been a lot of fun. And you have been on 3 times, I believe. And so we're excited to have you on here for number 3 here. And it's funny, I just got a text. Go ahead.
And I'll tell you what, let me give you a little plug, okay? And I'll tell all your audience too. This goes back to one of our initial conversations. I do feel like for some reason God's favor is on you, and he's kind of like teed you up for such an important, I think, mission and part of the mission during this season of the life of the church. So I think it's pretty cool to get to be Jeff Reed.
Yeah, if every once in a while God gives little sneak peeks. I don't think I've got the full vision in sight, but just little glimpses of what he's working on, and to be honest, I'm struggling to keep up. And so, like, it's going to be really exciting. I think the next couple months, as some of these opportunities and some of these God things start to actually like come to fruition. Some of the conversations now, here in the U.S. and even globally, like it's literally, I had a conversation. I don't even think that I've updated the NewThing team on this yesterday, but I had a conversation yesterday that I just about fell out of my seat when it was done.
Let's hear it.
Huh? Oh, no, I can't say it.
Give me a little hint. Come on.
I'm not.
No. You can't do that to me. I mean, like, Futurist is like one of my top strength finders, and it's like you're teasing me. So give us a little bit of something to go on.
Okay, so let's.
Why the adrenaline rush from yesterday's conversation?
I had not even a Christian tech company. Yesterday, I had a full-on tech company offer me a full-time job.
Nice. And why? What was it what was so compelling that they're going like, hey, we need Jeff Reed. We got to pay him bucks. We got to pay a full salary. What was the? A
tech company is trying to launch 1,800 to 5,500 churches in virtual reality in the next 12 months. Not a Christian tech company, a tech company that's developing a virtual reality platform wants to see church engagement to the point where they're asking for 1,800 to 5,500 churches to get launched on their platform.
And I'm guessing for them, they just said, this is an untapped market.
There's huge opportunities to use the religious in that space to drive engagement into their platform. There's a monetary subscription to use the platform. I mean, This has not been a factor from top to bottom, but incredible opportunities there. And so that's just one really small. And I'm like, okay, I'm not taking a full-time job. Like we got to figure this out. I got a nonprofit. Let's run it through that. Let's create a partnership. Like we're kind of talking through some of this now. But this is, and they're looking for opportunities to like engage into to get better connected into Christian space and to get connected to churches and Christian tech companies for integrations and so like there's just this let's keep talking. And that's one of Dave. I'll just be honest with you. And when I'm doing this recording right now, I'm having 9 conversations like that in the next 2 weeks. Of just 9 different either Christian organizations, Christian tech companies, corporations, non-Christian corporations that are interested. Like there's this wave of, that's what I'm saying. This is glimpses of God. Because I mean, listen, I love that you respect me and said what you just said. I am a freaking AVL guy who just happened to stumble in front of a camera during COVID, and all of a sudden everybody's like, "Ooh, Jeff." And so humbly, I'm going to do the humble brag here, except this time.
How cool is how cool? No, but it is how cool it is that God, I mean, and like you love this stuff as much as anybody. How cool is it that God goes like, you know what? Just for grins, I'm going to let Jeff be kind of one of the leading voices, if not the leading voice in the world on this stuff.
And that's
pretty awesome.
It's a lot of fun. And just to see, honestly, just to see God move through it. Because this thing has blown away today, like before today, but where I sit in this chair right now, never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I would be in this chair having this conversation, do 275 podcasts, talking with Dave Ferguson after writing a book based on Dave Ferguson's stuff, championing this idea, talking to all these and to be honest, several of these corporations I'm talking with, the reason I'm talking with them is because I wrote this book with Dr. John Harris based on Dave Ferguson's stuff.
That's awesome.
Like the Sharing Jesus Online book was really the front door.
Hey, I'll tell you what. And I know that's where we're going to go next, right? That's where we're going to go next because that's what you said you want to talk about. But I do think we should have a conversation because my hunch is you're really good at the sales part of this, attracting people's attention, correcting interest. Maybe NewThing, we got to figure out a way how we can help. Because if you got 9 of these in the pipeline, I mean, who's the person who can come alongside you and actually, the same way you kind of already told me, you get someone else finally now to do your finances because it's like you suck at it. Who can we get to actually operate? Like you're kind of the visionary. Where do we find an integrator who can actually make these things hum?
Yeah. It's so funny. You said the word integrator. We're actually,
right?
I know that's good. And that's the approach that we're using. We read, this is so good. I mean, this has nothing to do with the podcast. We wanted to have ladies and gentlemen, but this is meaningful to you. The book, and
this is a coaching session right now.
Like Traction.
Here we go. Yeah. Have you been reading the EOS
We
system?
read that a year ago. And so we were, DC and we were toying with that idea. We honestly couldn't find the integrator. And so we really did not have the opportunity to explore it because we didn't have the right personnel at the right time to implement that system. And Dave, I don't think I told you this story. There was a guy that reached out to me right after Exponential Orlando. Now, this is funny. We're at Exponential Orlando, and we had a bunch of gamer guys that were kind of hanging out with the Digital Church Network, and so we did a podcast with them. You go back and listen to it; it's in season 4 or something. But we one night during Exponential, I think it was the Wednesday night, we got all the gamer guys together at a guy who lived in Orlando. His name's Bernie's house. Bernie Mapili. We got it together at Bernie's house. And we invited over He Gets Us. Glue came over to meet with these gamer guys to talk about how we can get He Gets Us into gamer culture. So after Expo, I get a call from Bernie. I really don't know Bernie at all. Bernie says to me, he says, Jeff, he says, you and I are like the same person. You don't know me, but I'm really passionate about digital church, gamer church. He's an entrepreneur. He's created all these businesses. He's trying to do this stuff. And he said, I don't understand how you got He Gets Us in my living room at 10 o'clock at night on a Wednesday night for 3 hours to talk about gamers. Like how you have that influence. And I told him the same thing I'm telling you. I'm like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Like this, I can't brag about this. This is just a God thing. This is, and
you're unconsciously competent.
But this is what's funny. Bernie says to me, instead of Bernie trying to do what he's doing, because he's been struggling to really make the impact at the church level. Business level is incredible. Church level, he's like, it's not happening. So Bernie says to me, I'm bragging about Bernie here. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna Jeff, I want to work for you for free. I essentially, he's like, I want to be your integrator for your business, for the business side, for the ministry side of what you're doing. And so Bernie came on. We onboarded Digital Church Network. We went from 4 leaders to 15 leaders, like overnight, over the span of like 4 weeks. Just building these infrastructures, these systems, recruiting these leaders. And it's so exciting now to see people like understanding the vision of this thing. And it's like, Jeff, don't have to tell them what to do. They are challenging. I had one of my guys, one of my 4 R's, one of my R directors, my relationship guy. He challenged me down. He shot an idea that I had down. And the funny thing was he used my exact words to do it. Like when he was done telling me no, and I heard what he said, I was like, I told you to say that. Like, I told you that. I taught you that. He's like, yes, I actually listened to you and you're right. So do what you say. And so it was really funny. I love this season. I love where ministry is taking, and the friends at NewThing have been incredible and will continue to be incredible. I'm sure as our relationships grow through it. So, hey, you know what? We are like 20 minutes into this podcast, or 15 minutes into this podcast, and we actually really want to talk about the topic at hand. And so, Dave,
hey, I have a question. Though.
You do this every time I have you on the show. I want to acknowledge this. I bring you on for a topic, and you're like, no, forget the topic. We're just gonna go off.
No, my question is, you wrote this great book, but where's Dr. John Harris? He's supposed to be here.
Yeah, so Dr. John Harris literally just entered the room right now. Dr. John, you want to say hey?
There he is. Look at that.
Hey, guys. I am not sure what happened there.
Dr. John was...
We've been filling time waiting for the expert to get here.
Oh, well, then I'll wait with you.
Oh, good time. So, this podcast was supposed to be 3, and Dr. John is jumping on. He got caught up in some other things, but we're excited to have him on. John, we've been randomly talking. You'll have to go back to listen to this podcast to actually understand what we've been talking about in the scope. We've been kind of all over the map, just maybe intentionally stalling for you to have this conversation together, centered around B.L.E.S.S practices, how to bless the church, sharing Jesus online, digital, and really, John, we launched the book back in January. January, 4 months ago, and it's gotten a lot of attention online. We've seen a lot of success with it, a lot of exposure with other organizations, a lot of questions now being asked about digital missionaries in places that I know it wasn't talked about before. And so, I wanted to bring us together, the 3 of us, because Dr. John, we didn't have Dave. When we did develop the marketing plan for the book, it never occurred to either of us to have a conversation with Dave Ferguson. We probably should have had a conversation with Dave Ferguson and say, hey, why don't you do a podcast with us when the book launches? No, that didn't make sense. So we'll do it after the fact and enjoy the greatness of that. So hey, both of you, thanks for jumping on this podcast and joining in. So Dave, I'd love to just dig in with you a little bit. We're going to spitball back and forth between the 2 of you guys, but
sure.
Where did the concept of B.L.E.S.S, maybe even a summarization, a little bit of B.L.E.S.S, but where did this concept come from?
I think in some ways it goes way back, kind of came from some of my own frustration with trying to share the good news, share the love of God and Jesus with the people that I love, my neighbors, whether it's the neighbors right next door, where you live, where you work, where you play. I literally, I remember when as a young leader, actually, even when we were first planting the church, or no, before that, I'd say, I was one of those guys who was super on fire. And I mean, I would do like street evangelism. I would do things that where I'm going door to door. Basically, I was just harassing people and answering questions that they weren't asking, and was being just obnoxious. And I found out that didn't work. And so I kind of swung the other way, and I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to live my life like Jesus and see if, that makes an impact. And so didn't use any words and kind of just tried to do the right thing. And my neighbors thought I was a good guy. My neighbors, I think, liked being my neighbor. They liked having me as a neighbor, but it also didn't result in me getting to share Jesus with them. And so it was really as a result of that frustration. And by that point, I'd already planted a church, and I was going, okay, there's got to be a better way, both for me and for the people in my church. And there were a couple different things that happened along the way that really kind of pointed us towards these B.L.E.S.S practices. But essentially, at the very beginning, it came out of my own frustration of trying to kind of shoot people with my gospel gun or just passively do nothing. And neither one of those worked.
And so B.L.E.S.S practices begin with prayer, listen. Now, in the physical book, the book that Dave and his brother John wrote, it's eat together, the physical expression of eating to build a relationship, and it's then serve, and then it's share Jesus, share your Jesus story. That's the acronym of B.L.E.S.S. And Dave, your book published on this. I think you were doing it before the book published, but the book published in 2020?
Yeah, 21. Yeah, we probably, and we went through a couple different iterations that didn't work around that. But then we'd probably been doing this at Community and then other places for 8 years before we ever published the book. So it's not like something that was kind of like a theory and going like, hey, let's just write it up and see if it works. Then we began to see it work and really in real people's lives. And so we probably did it 8 years before we published the book in 2021.
All right, so I got to ask this because I had no idea there were iterations.
Yeah.
What was the biggest screw up? What was the biggest, oh crap, that's not going to work? What was the biggest lesson in the iterations?
We had, they weren't really that interesting, but we did. Like, I remember before that, we we brought our whole staff team together, including the spouses, because we wanted to kind of start with them. We felt like we were going to change the culture, start with them. And we had like 2 or 3 questions we wanted you to ask every week. And they were interesting, but they weren't as sticky as this. And it was pretty quickly when we kind of started using the B.L.E.S.S stuff, the B.L.E.S.S practices. And then we started with the staff. Then we began to unfold it to other key leaders and influence our church. And then eventually, we even talk about how to change the culture. Eventually, then the whole church, it really got traction. And so, but there were a couple of them that were, nope, that's not going to work. Let's start over again.
Yeah, and then that leads us up to, arguably one of the greatest moments of my 45-year-old life, when 2022, Dave Ferguson walks up to me and says, "Hey, Jeff, you know what? You should write a book." And we had the opportunity to write Sharing Jesus Online, which was a book that was based off of B.L.E.S.S practices, based off of Dave's framework, Dave and John's framework, and poured it over. And I, at the time, did not think I had the capacity to write the book on my own. I was in the middle of writing another book on virtual reality churches. And I was like, hey, you know what we should do? We should totally bring in a co-author into the situation. And that's where Dr. John Harris, who is having internet issues, came into the conversation. I'm like,
now that is ironic, right?
This is the biggest train wreck of a podcast. I'm watching John like come on the screen and come off and come on and come off, and so the question I was about to ask is, Dr. John, talk about the book. And so I got to bring him back in. Hopefully we're going to get him in the next 5 seconds. If not, I'm going to answer John's question for him. Dr. John Harris, lead pastor of Hearts Like His, a primarily Facebook church that's online currently, a discipleship movement, maybe some would call it that. But hey, John, talk to us a little bit. About the book, maybe the process for you for writing it, some of the experiences, how we ported B.L.E.S.S into how we adopted B.L.E.S.S into digital space. Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I think when I had seen Dave and John's book a few years ago, and even when I saw it then, I thought, like, this is the kind of thing that Christians are looking for, a practical how-to. Like, what do I do? I don't need to hear more sermons about why it's necessary to share Jesus. I know that we should do that. No one's telling me how. And so when I saw that book, I thought it's very simple, practical, memorable, all of that. And so so that was just kind of like in the back of my mind for a while, as I thought, that's a great in-person kind of deal. And there were some elements of that even in my own neighborhood, because I moved, my family moved here in 2019, that I was implementing here, just locally. For me, I used to be the guy that's like, I live across the street from you, and if we see each other checking the mail, I'll wave, and that's pretty much it, And so when I moved here, there are principles about B.L.E.S.S that I had in mind that helped me to go, let me start connecting. Let me start being more intentional with conversations beyond, hey, how are you? So like now I know all my neighbors' names. I know their kids' names. I know their school, what they go to. One of them is a babysitter across the street. Really cool relationships. And so when we started Hearts Like His in January of 2021, being online, and it first started off with us trying to target those who had left the church and things like that, really not shooting for the unsaved necessarily, but trying to turn around the trend of the rise of the Duns and trying to be a part of the return of the Duns. So you have these two groups of people that are really looking to be empowered, those who left the church but still love Jesus, and those who are still regularly attending the church. And so during COVID, it was a cool opportunity because everyone was all online, right? Like everyone has left the church, so to speak. So in the midst of this pandemic, how can we equip people to take advantage of the evangelistic opportunities that are also online? Because not just Christians, but everyone else is looking. So we were looking at this book and just the idea to put a tool like this in Christians' hands so they can do evangelism online. I just was like, yes, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of doing that. So So that was kind of some of my rationale. And then you couple that with all of the research, the reports, the statistics about what people are doing online, looking for answers online, all those kind of things, with the rise of digital evangelism on all these different platforms that we're able to kind of bring together and share in the earlier parts, even throughout the book. Like, this is a game changer. And so we can answer that question, what should you do? Especially when you're spending a lot of time online and you're seeing comments come across your feed. You're seeing people reach out for help, but you're not a pastor. You're seeing people ask questions, but you might not know the answer. So letting all these opportunities every day pass you by. And so I was like, man, if we can partner together and create something to answer that same question, what can you do online? That'll be huge. That'll be huge.
Totally. Yeah. And so the book is available for download for free. Thank you to Exponential, but it's at sharingjesusonline.com. And so that is a PDF that you can download. It's a book you can buy through Amazon. I'm happy to say my mom was the first to buy the book. My mom was not the only person to buy the book. Like we've had some moderate success in downloads. Last I checked, there was well over 1,000 downloads on that. So I was kind of excited. 1,000 people are walking around with the resource, right? It's a big step in the right direction. So definitely excited about where we're going with some of this. And so you can check out the book Sharing Jesus online for that. Now, Dave, and if you listen to the first 15, 20 minutes of the podcast, you've always been a huge supporter of me, thank you, but of digital and of recognizing, a lot of people don't recognize the relational context of digital, but you've always been a proponent of that and supporting of that, or at least in my context of you. I'm curious though, where did this come from? Why are you such a fan of digital? You don't often find a lot of lead pastors in your position taking the stance that you are. What makes you the unicorn here?
I don't know. I think maybe in some ways I am a lead pastor, but I probably think more like an entrepreneur. And even on Strength Finders, I'm high on the futuristic, and it just seems obvious to me. It's just obvious to me that for the church to move forward, this is what I've been telling people both through NewThing and Exponential. There's still going to continue to be macro expressions. And I think there's a whole bunch, like our friend Rob Wegner and other people, there's going to be a whole bunch of micro expressions. But the other part that we got to take into consideration is also meta expressions. And so we're going to have all three. And I think we need to think in terms of multiple expressions of church to reach all the people. And it's the World Wide Web, for Pete's sake. Okay. So to me, it seems obvious. People are building deep enough connections that they're meeting each other and getting married. Most folks now, that's how they meet people, and that's how they start dating online. So it's like, yes, you can build relationships online, and yes, you can build disciples online. So I do think as church leaders, we need to both get on board, and if we're not doing it ourselves, the same way you may not champion like a church plant to a certain context because you're going like, well, I really don't know anything about rural. I don't really feel comfortable in the city. I'm more of a suburban guy. Well, great. That's fine. But at least give your people permission and encourage them to do it and go there. And I think the same thing's true with the meta.
So, obviously there's a lot of pastors that don't have the vision that you have in this space. One of the things that I love about Community Christian is you've run, what is actually the term? Stadia used to call it multimodal, where there were multiple models of church that were operating. And so what does community call that? Like, because you've got the physical church, you're doing some things online, you're doing micro church models, prison. Like, what's the term for the multiple streams, kind of with that?
Yeah, we actually talked about, like, before COVID, we would say we're one church with multiple locations. Now you would hear us consistently say we're one church with multiple expressions. So those expressions, those four right now are exactly what you said. There's the digital expression. There's also the physical expression, which is in our locations. There's also in prison facilities through Community Freedom, and then also our micro expressions, and that's been really taken off.
So after, I'm calling us in a post-COVID society. Hopefully that's understood. But in this season, a lot of churches are focusing on what worked in the past. They want to simplify down to one expression. But you're seeing, I'm hoping, and I'd love to hear about what success you're seeing multiple, and starting to have multiple expressions like you're doing now. What would you tell a pastor? Like, how would you coach a pastor who's trying to go back and simplify towards only one expression?
Well, I mean, I think you're missing a lot of opportunity in the language we use at Community Christian Church to help people find their way back to God. I mean, like I think I bet every new person that showed up at a physical location of Community Christian Church, I mean, 100% have first experienced us digitally. They come and check out our website. They watch us online. And so at the very least, I mean, if you think in terms of just marketing, it's top of the funnel for reaching people at the very least. Now, having said that, though, we have some, and I tell people this, I mean, for some people, like Community Online, community.tv, I mean, for some of them, it actually is their home. And for those people where that's your home, we tell them, we want you to have 3 connections. It's not good enough just to sit there and watch the video, every week and worship with that. No, we also want you, so that's your connection with God. We also want you to be connected in a small group, and that could be digital, but we also want you serving. And you guys are describing some of the ways you can serve online. So we want you to be involved in all three expressions if you're going to be a disciple. But we do think that can happen that way. But the other thing that's also, and it's a little off topic a little bit, but what we've done with the micro expressions, which does integrate really with the digital, is really exciting. I mean, right now, I think in the last 19 or 20 months, we've been able to start 31 micro churches. Some of them are local, like in Chicago. Some are local in Chicago. Some are across the country, but others are in places like India and Uganda, because those folks or participate in our Community Online. We advertise our micro church training, and they say, "Hey, can we be a part of it?" And we say, "Absolutely." And so they get the training, and then they say, "Hey, we would like to start a community micro church." And then what we do is we give them ongoing coaching after that. And I'm telling our staff too, because I think last count, there's about 900 folks weekly that are part of our micro churches. And what I'm telling them, I'm going like, listen, this I'm telling our staff that this is like our third largest physical location, and there's a good chance. Well, seriously, you got 900 folks, right? And I said, a year from now or 2 years from now, it'll probably be our largest expression. So don't keep putting it off the side like, oh, that's a cute thing we do. And by the way, I mean, how much money does it cost us? I mean, we got one staff person who's also a location pastor, a guy named Rodrigo Cano, who's brilliant at this, who does the training and a lot of the coaching. And then we give him, I think maybe he spent $20,000. I compare that to like what you typically cost to launch a location or a church with a macro. You're spending $500,000 and all that kind of stuff. So but it's kind of cool because it is they're micro churches, but we're actually doing the training, digitally, and it's using that platform that's making it happen, which is pretty cool.
John, as you're hearing this, I know obviously digital plays a big part with what you're doing. What advice, what counsel, what coaching would you offer to a pastor who is struggling with digital and really embracing in that?
I think I would begin with asking some questions, like what is it? Typically when a leader, whether in the church or outside the church, is really struggling with some kind of new idea or innovation or opportunity, there's a fear there. So I think helping the individual identify like what are you most concerned about? What are you afraid could go wrong? What are you afraid of losing? What are you, and then kind of explore that. And once we get there, then look at how these opportunities, to kind of reframe what these opportunities look like. And so if we actually put the mission first and we think about opportunities for in-person church multiplication and micro-church multiplication, and then the potential for lives to be changed that way, and then talk about the opportunity for that to be exponentially, pun intended, multiplied online. Think about once people wrap their minds around digital micro churches. You can just imagine what can happen online with digital micro churches once people, especially in the pews, so to speak, understand that one, it's biblically valid and legitimate. Like, this is kingdom work. And then number two, they can do it. Number three, it doesn't have to look like Sunday morning. It can be 4 or 5 people. And it can be all around the world at any time. I mean, just the opportunities for digital evangelism and discipleship are massive if we actually put mission first. And so when talking to pastors who might stumble over little pieces of it, I want to know, what part of it are you stumbling over, and how does your ecclesiology need to shift, and how does your missiology need to shift? I mean, that's where the conversation really is. And once people go, okay, go and make disciples in all the world, okay? It's really easy to have a conversation about the opportunities online once we deal with whatever hurdles or obstacles there are mentally, maybe even theologically, with doing it online.
I'll tell you what, I want to jump in there. I think you made a good point, John. I think one of the things that does get in the way of a lot of pastors is their ecclesiology. And, so that's kind of a $10 word for what you think makes up a church. And I think one of the things that's made it simpler for us at Community is we would define church this way: a community of people on mission together where Jesus is king. If you got those 3 parts, a community of people on mission together, like you said, missions first, where Jesus is king. Okay, no, he's Lord, so he gets to decide what happens here. If you got those 3 parts, you got a church. And so that's why, for me, it's not a long leap to go like, yeah, you could do this on Facebook. You could do this, online. You could on Discord or whatever platform you decide to use.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, I think the idea there is, typically when a pastor is stumbling over digital church, they have a more complex view of what the church is. Once you simplify it, then it's really easy to see the opportunities to have that expression online, number one. And then number two, when we begin to share life change stories about what's happening online, then that also is another way to help pastors think mission first and go, man, okay, if a person's life is being changed, like God did something, there's a clear moving from A to B. I was blind and now I see, and I'm connected to a community that's helping me grow in faith. Like, what pastor, argues with that and goes, I don't see God in it. I don't know what, so I think simplifying the ecclesiology, I think sharing life change stories of salvation, of discipleship, of people being free from stuff. Those are the 2 main things I would do once we talk about what is your fear. So those are things I would say to keep. And I've seen it happen. I've seen pastors shift. I was talking to a group of pastors and church consultants on one occasion, and as I was sharing what was really going on, they also began to see the opportunities here for what God's doing online.
I've heard Ed Love. Dave, what denomination is Ed Love with? I'm just blanking right now. Do you know? Off the top of your head? Of course, I'd call you on it. You don't. I'm sorry.
No,
that's all right. But I've heard him talk. I did a podcast with him a while back.
Guess what?
You have Google.
I have the internet.
Yeah,
here.
I figured it out while I'm talking. But Ed used the term. It's funny. It's not minimal ecclesiology because minimal indicates you're getting rid of stuff.
Wesleyan. He's a Wesleyan. I should know that because they're like one of the biggest groups that comes to Exponential.
Yeah, there you go.
Gosh,
God love the Wesleyan people. Thank you, Ed Love. But
Yep.
he uses the term essential ecclesiology. It's that boiling it down to what's essential as opposed to hiding and minimalizing what's sweeping away. We're doing a podcast season here. We're talking about next level, moving beyond the weekend service. And just this conversation is ironic to me because 3 of the 6 episodes, I didn't plan it, but 3 of the 6 episodes have churches that are really strong in digital micro church, that are using digital for a micro church strategy. We've had Tyler Sansom was earlier, and First Capital Christian Church Anywhere. They've got a small church of like 800. I say small, medium-sized church of 800 people has like 25 micro locations in addition to all sorts of other crazy stuff Tyler's doing. Jay Cranda's on next week. And, and I know Jay through Saddleback is moving towards a decentralized model as well, in addition to what they're doing in the physical space. And so there's a lot of opportunities for churches to think differently with how digital is, and to move beyond just doing that streaming service, which is really the heart of what we're trying to do with the learning communities, the Leadership Network, which is why we were at like Tyler. Hey, Tyler, come in and co-lead this with us and try to help us get going with this, to help churches understand how to move beyond just broadcasting that service and doing something more tangible, more missional, more evangelic with the digital tool. As a matter of fact, the Sharing Jesus Online book, I've talked about this. Actually, was written up in a positive light and a negative light by Relevant Magazine. But we're doing some mission trips into the metaverse. We're helping churches go and take their people on a mission trip. We did a podcast on this earlier this year as well. But looking at, instead of buying a plane ticket to go to, I don't know, Belize, to go on a mission trip to Belize, instead of missing that week's worth of work and spending the hotel and getting your visa and passport, all that, we're challenging people to go buy a Oculus 2 for $350. And to literally, the training is the book, Sharing Jesus Online, which you can download for free, and learn how to do the B.L.E.S.S practices in virtual reality. We're literally challenging people to get a headset, go into the metaverse, and learn how to share Jesus relationally with, by the way, people in virtual reality are far more interested in having a conversation than people in physical space. You go up to somebody at Starbucks and start a random conversation, there's a possibility, especially here in Miami, there's a decent chance I'm going to get an F-bomb. Virtual reality, you're not going to get F-bombs. Like, it just doesn't work that way. They want to talk. Some of these world, like, there's literally a world that's called VR chat. And it's not called chat because of anything else, other than the fact that people want to talk in that world. And so there's opportunities to start to dialogue in new ways through it. And so check out the learning community, leadnet.org/DLC, digital learning community, leadnet.org, MLC for the metaverse learning community. And more information is there on that. Well, guys, we packed a lot in here into this podcast. Dr. John, your tech held up. We're very excited about that. Thanks for coming in.
And it was kind of crazy, but I'm glad to be able to participate a little bit. And so appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you guys.
Very cool. And Dave, it's always a pleasure. So maybe as we're landing the plane here, a brief moment, Dr. John, any closing thoughts on your side?
I would just encourage pastors and hopefully this discussion has helped them kind of think outside of any box that they have been in. I think to some degree, all of us are in some kind of box. That just box gets bigger. And the Holy Spirit is just want us to put mission first, mission first, mission first. And so to see opportunities online as well, to not just be a threat to in-person, but a supplement, an additional extension of the ministry. And so in-person can launch into digital, and digital can actually create some in-person relationships. So we had one house church start from hearts like his, and that house church planted another house church, all from starting digital. I mean, that person is in Colorado. I'm in California. And so there's just so many things that God's doing, and doing it online is an opportunity to be a part of what he's doing globally in the most least expensive way possible.
Very cool. So we've had 4 people on that are doing micro church. I didn't realize you had grown to a micro church level yourself. That's cool. Dave, as we're landing the plane here, any closing thoughts on your side?
Yeah, my closing thought is I see why you recruited Dr. John to co-author this book with you.
No kidding.
Nicely done.
Very, very cool. The secret was that I probably wrote the first draft of the book. I probably wrote 60% of the book, and Dr. John wrote 40% of the book. And by the time that the final version was written, Dr. John had probably written about 70% of the book, and I'd probably written about 30. So he at some point he flipped the switch, and it was like boom, all Dr. John all over the place. And I'll publicly say it, like, it is so much better than what I was drafting on my side. So it really came out well. So you can check out the book, sharingjesusonline.com. Obviously Dave with Exponential, with Leadership Network, with Community, with NewThing, so many different hats and opportunities there. And it's a pleasure to work inside that ecosystem that is so supportive of digital church, digital discipleship, digital ministry. And seeing Dave and family and friends over there in those worlds really champion and get behind some of the work that's happening here. It's been a blessing. And so I consider it a joy to know both of these guys, Dr. John and Dave, have been influential for me in the past couple years, and I'm looking forward to much more to come. Check out the learning communities, check out the book, and thanks y'all for joining on the podcast. So for Dr. John, for Dave, this is Jeff with the Church Digital and Digital Church Network. Thanks for jumping on the pod here. See you next time on the show. Y'all have a good day.